You're listening to Lace Up with your host VJ Johnson II. Grab your tennis shoes, get your cleats, because it's time to lace up. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Lace Up. I'm your host VJ Johnson II, ready to give you the latest, hottest news and updates in the world of sports. I appreciate everybody jumping in and joining the podcast and giving me a little bit of your time to talk some good, healthy sports talk as always. Hope everybody's had a great week as always. We are winding down August, y'all. This is crazy. Year's been moving pretty fast. We're getting ready to get into September. Spooky season is right around the corner. Look, Starbucks, they got the fall drinks already out there, man. I had me a pumpkin spice frappuccino the other day. I highly suggest y'all go in there and get you one. But man, yeah, love the fall. Really looking forward to the fall weather. To be perfectly honest with you, just because this heat is no joke. And look, anybody who's working outside, like I empathize with you, because again, this weather, this heat is insane. But again, sooner or later, we will be getting some nice fall weather. So looking forward to that. With that being said, looking forward to our conversation that we have for today. Got a lot of nice things to discuss that's happening around in the sports world. Got some football updates, obviously, because football is right here, man. Excited. Look, we're getting closer and closer, man. Tomorrow is week 0 of the college football season. Of course, we got the NFL. It's currently in preseason right now. That is right around the corner as well for week 1. But with that being said, let's get into things. And wait. Before I forget it, man, I didn't get a chance to talk to you all about this at all. But I know we had the verses that took place the other week. Didn't get a chance again to discuss it with y'all last week, but we had the verses with Donnell Jones and Joe. And, I don't know how many of you all watched it, but, me as an R&B fan, and I know a lot of people as, 90s R&B fans, we're tuned in to watch it. And of course, both of these artists, Donnell Jones and Joe, have some hits. Obviously Joe is more so known for, a lot of more of his hits, just because they went, hit the charts a lot harder. But Donnell Jones has his fair share of hits as well, that align, that can also put up a fight. And I said before this versus, people would sleep on Donnell Jones, which they really are. Honestly, like, there's a lot of songs that Donnell has that people don't realize. There's some songs that he wrote that people don't realize. Like, he has those deep cuts. But of course, Joe has his cuts as well. So, but again, overall, I thought that, from a musical standpoint, like, both of these guys had brought a lot to the table. Only thing I was really disappointed is because my boy Donnell Jones, man, his voice is shot. Unfortunately, we know Joe was going to bring it from a performance perspective. But Donnell Jones, I know that, and I actually found this out. I didn't find it out. He was going through some, challenges and some struggles in his past, and that can affect, obviously, the things that he was going through can affect your voice, and of course, when you're not performing as much. So but there was a lot of jokes going on Twitter, man. It was actually a fun night, man. And like I said, they had a real R&B unk off. You know what I'm saying? That was a real R&B unk off, and I was living for every moment of it. Again, love both of those artists and what they brought to the table. Just again, knew that Joe was going to bring it on the mic harder. And Donnell Jones, he probably, honestly, I said this, he should have just stood up there, honestly, and let his songs play, and then and let it speak for itself. So that's what I would have did. To be honest with you, if I was Donnell, I would have just been like, look, I'm going up here, I'm gonna play my songs, and I'll let it, let those speak for themselves. But with that being said, again, let's jump into our sports talk because we have some good stuff to talk about. Breaking news for the first topic of the day. Keelon Russell has been named the starting quarterback of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Yes, Keelon Russell, he's been named QB1. This is reported by Pete Thamel from ESPN. This was on last Saturday. And again, former five-star recruit he was competing with Austin Mack. Again, former five-star recruit is Keelon Russell. He was competing with Austin Mack for the starting quarterback position. Obviously, with Ty Simpson leaving, going to the NFL, there was a lot of questions about who was going to be the next quarterback in line to take over for the Crimson Tide. And we know that, again, Keelon Russell, he was the number two in the number two overall recruiting class in 2025. And so he did appear in 2 games as a freshman for the Crimson Tide. And just from kind of a statistical standpoint, what he was able to do, he threw for 240 yards and 4 touchdowns as well. So, and again, this is during his freshman year. And then we also saw him in the A-Day game, of course, as well. Keelon Russell, guy who's 6'3", 207 pounds. Again, this is his sophomore year. And he'll be leading this Crimson Tide offense who, has playmakers across the board. You may not know about all of these playmakers, but playmakers are, all around that offense. Again, you got Latsir Brooks, you got Ryan Coleman Williams, you got Cedarian Morgan, you got guys like that. Derek Meadows, there's some guys out there that can really, make this offense go. And Russell is going to be that guy. And again, just to give you guys a backstory about, Russell, before he joined the Crimson Tide, obviously he had a really, really great high school career at Duncanville High School in Texas. And he actually, won 2 state championships. He was the Gatorade National Player of the Year, Elite 11 Finals MVP, honors as a senior in high school. So really, really great career, like I said, in high school. And then, on the other side, Austin Mack, obviously he was at Washington 2023. He's been with Kalen DeBoer. This is his 4th year under a DeBoer system. And, last season he played 62 snaps. And, obviously, like, he was the primary backup. He did end up stepping into the Rose Bowl after Ty Simpson went out with the fractured ribs. And kind of, he honestly provided a spark for the offense. He pushed, obviously led them on a drive down the field. Obviously, it was a little late at that point. But, Austin Mack, again, he stepped in. And, again, a guy who understands DeBoer's system. And, when you look at this quarterback battle, and I mentioned this before, you look at Mack and you look at Keelon Russell, both of these quarterbacks, they provide you different things. I think that Mack, again, he gives you that experience from understanding DeBoer's system. And then you look at Keelon Russell, a guy, Keelon Russell, who, he gives you that versatility, right? Explosive plays, and that playmaking ability, not only with his arm but with his legs, is also, that's a threat. Being that dual threat guy, and the biggest question for Kalen DeBoer and the coaching staff was, hey, do you want to go with experience or do you want to go with the guy who's a playmaker who has a higher ceiling? Because I do think Keelon Russell has a higher ceiling. And I as you were kind of looking at the reports that were coming out, listening to DeBoer and Ryan Grubb in these kind of press press conferences after practice, you could get a sense and a feel of, well, initially, I want to say initially you could, because they kept it very vague, but you started to, based off of the reports that were coming out of fall camp, you could see uh, things were leaning a certain direction. And I personally feel like they've known for a few weeks who they were going to name the starter. I was always a guy who said, again, all respect to Austin Mack, but I was always a guy who's always like, look, Keelon Russell is that guy. And I think you go with him. You know, he gives you the best opportunity to win. And, you know, even after he's been named the starter, I mean, his teammates, they've reportedly known a difference since he's been named the starter. I mean, the mentality that he has uh, as such a young player is really good. And look, from example, you know, during scrimmages, he's been leading the offense down the field on one of the best defenses in the country. You know, Alabama, again, they're going to be up there as one of the best defenses in the country with the amount of players that they have returning. And Keelon Russell being able to lead drives against this defense. And again, for all of those who may be like, oh, you know, how is he being able to lead drives against such you know, this defense is supposed to be top notch. Look, this is what we call iron sharpening iron. This doesn't mean the defense isn't making plays and getting the best of the offense. But what you want to see is a back and forth. You want to see offense be able to drive the ball on a defense like Alabama's. That shows you, you know, a bit of who you are. And, you know, a prime example, you know, Keelon, he hit a 55-yard. The practice right after he was named the starter, Keelon hits a 55-yard pass to Ryan Coleman Williams, and then the offense is scoring 4 plays later. So those are the type of things you want to see from Keelon Russell. You want to see those connections be established early. You know, him and Ryan Coleman Williams, him and Sedarian Morgan, him and Latia Brooks, or aka Lottie Brooks, him and Derek Meadows. You know, that's what you want to see. And I think with Keelon Russell, this changes the trajectory of the season for Alabama when you're looking into this season. And, you know, yes, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you know, they're going to be growing pains. Of course, there's going to be growing pains. I hate, and I personally hate that when it comes to Alabama, there's always like, oh, there's going to be growing pains. There's growing pains with any quarterback who's stepping into being a starter their first year. It happened with Arch at Texas. It happened with Julian Sayin at Ohio State. Look, there's going to be growing pains. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to throw an interception, you know, whatever. But the thing about this is looking at these first few games in the season, you know, gives him an opportunity to be able to get all those kinks out and be able to get comfortable and get better each game. You know, they had their first game against Eastern Carolina at home. So that'll be a good you know, start for him to be able to get in a momentum and get in the groove. You know, obviously, you know, early on they do have you know, they go on the road against Kentucky, first road test. You know, obviously, I think that the Tide will handle their own, but again, being able to be tested on the road before. And then they get into obviously like that 9-game conference schedule in the SEC is not going to be any joke. So I think the more comfortable he can get early, the better. And again, and I'll say this last thing, and then we'll move on to our next topic here, is that, you know, I've noticed that people are starting to change their tune about Alabama since Keelon is been named the starter. Everybody's like, oh, you know, Keelon, the same people who were talking trash about Bama, oh, they don't know who their quarterback is going to be. Oh, there's questions on their offensive line. Oh, they're not going to be able to run the football. All these different things, all the trash has been talked. They rank us number 13, which I love, by the way. Perfect spot for Alabama. Please football against 18, 19, 20-year-olds because you were cut from an NFL team. I don't agree with that. I I will never agree with that. That's just, this whole situation is just it's chaotic to me, and it's doesn't make any type of sense. So fast forward, and I kept saying, I'm like, look, this is dumb, y'all. Like, what are we even talking about here? This is why they talk about college football being cooked, the NCAA being cooked, like all of these crazy things. But fast forward, the Big Ten uh, ended up coming out and saying, "Hey, look, we're banning this from happening. We're not going to allow this happen." And they put out a statement. The SEC followed suit and put out a statement that they will ban this from happening as well. And they will be suspending coaches who add pro players. So let me just read you all, kind of catch you up on what the logistics and what all of this entails. So it says that, as any SEC school, that brings back an NFL, NBA, WNBA player to the program, they're going to face penalties, obviously steep discipline when it comes from the penalty side. And this was a new policy. It was unanimously approved this literally this week among the conference's 16 members. This was on Wednesday when this was approved. So the penalties are actually going to include a half a season suspension for a coach, a fine that matches 50% of the sport's annual budget, and a revocation of league voting rights. So in the SEC member schools, they also gave Greg Sankey the authority to impose additional sanctions as needed. So again, the chancellors and the presidents, they voted 15-0 to confirm the penalties, with LSU being the only school that abstained from voting. Why? Is because LSU was the school that they had players that were actually coming, back. The Daquan Wrights and a couple of one or two other players. And again, this again was unanimous decision. Excuse me. Again, the Big Ten did it. The SEC, the ACC has now joined this as well in banning these professional athletes from coming back to college. And they said, look, and honestly, I like what the SEC is doing, because they actually even took it a little bit further than what the Big Ten did. And they said, look, they're prohibiting anyone who has previously declared for professional basketball from rejoining college athletics without appropriately withdrawing. So that's another step. So here's again another kind of a breakdown before we kind of bring this one to a close here. Again, they have made this step-by-step explanation, and again, this is directly from the SEC, that institutions are not permitted to have an athlete on their roster who has, one, previously declared for NFL, NBA, or the WNBA draft and didn't appropriately withdraw, two, has signed a contract with an NFL or other professional football league, NBA/G League or WNBA or affiliate team. And last but not least, number three, been listed on an NFL or other professional football league, NBA or G League or WNBA or affiliate roster. So those are those are the rules there. And again, Sankey is authorized to enforce this expectation and penalties against these institutions. And again, being that Lane Kiffin and LSU refused to vote, again, because Ole Miss's tight end Daquan Wright, who was on the Cleveland Browns roster, he was waived or cut, and then end up saying, look, and declaring entered into the portal and committed to going to LSU, which would be his fifth season of football. But again, I think that this whole situation is it's absolutely, honestly, it's ridiculous. It's stupid that we're even at this point where college football has gotten here to where they're saying that it's okay for pro athletes to come back to college football. They need to get this thing under wraps. And for all of those of you who laughed at Nick Saban, Saban said that this is going to be chaos in college football, free agency in college football, this whole NIL, all of this whole thing that's happening right now. Nick Saban called it. And a lot of y'all laughed at him. Y'all hate it. Y'all said he was old and just because he couldn't compete. And while he was sitting here trying to fight for some structure, for some organization for college football, y'all said all of these things about the GOAT, about Nick Saban. And look where we are now, in pure chaos. And the NCAA can't get control of it. And even now, we still have states that are even trying to push back in saying that the SEC and the Big Ten and the ACC they're not they can't overrule what a judge says. It's a lot of back and forth right now, but this is what happens when you don't have any structure, when there's no organization, when there's no commissioner in college football. You have separate commissioners, but they don't have one head commissioner like they do in the NFL to be able to enforce these rules. Have something standard across the board so that everybody's aligned. But hey, I'm excited to watch football. But again, this is a huge issue that needs to be addressed. This is, something that has gotten out of control, and they need to take hold of it sooner rather than later. So, but shouts out to the conferences for doing this. And I haven't really heard anything from the Big 12 yet, but so far, again, the SEC, the Big 10, and the ACC, I'm sure the Big 12 will join the pack as well. But yeah, man, they got to get control of this, and we'll continue to follow this story and see what happens. But before we get into our next topic here, you are listening to the Lace Up Sports Talk show right here on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Audio Boom, and of course on YouTube as well. Make sure you hit that subscribe button below. You'll see it right there in the banner. You also will see information regarding the Instagram page. Please make sure you go follow the Instagram page as well. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll be notified when new episodes get posted. And you'll also be notified on the Instagram side, any postings that come out. I appreciate all the love, all the support that you all continue to show, and looking forward to continuing this journey with y'all in this great discussions that we have about sports. All right, now it is time for our hot take of the day. Now, obviously, I'm an SEC guy, so we're going to make this hot take live within the SEC kind of football topic here. I know there's been a lot of discussions about who are going to lead the pack in the SEC this year. People have obviously come out and said that it's Texas and everybody else, or Texas and Georgia and everybody else. There's other people that say, look, the top half of the SEC, it's anybody's, again, that top half, anybody can win it. You got, again, Texas, Georgia, you got LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss. You got a few teams that people are throwing out there that can make a run and get to the SEC championship game. But my hot take of the day is going to be that neither Texas or LSU are going to make the SEC championship game. That's why this is a hot take, people. Look, you gotta make bold predictions out here. That is my hot take. Neither Texas nor LSU is going to make the SEC championship game. And listen, you could call me crazy. Like, you can think that's insane. But I think that, again, neither one of them are going to make the SEC championship game. Instead, I think that the SEC championship game will feature Alabama and Georgia. Yeah, I think Alabama and Georgia are going to meet again for the SEC championship game. It'll be a rematch again. I think that we, seen, historically, Alabama and Georgia meeting up in the SEC championship game has been, again, something that has been, looked at as the matchup that you want to see, in the SEC. I think that they last year marked the 6th time that they met in the SEC championship game. while that one was a little more lopsided than normal, obviously, but with Georgia winning that one. But I think that we'll see Bama in Georgia. I again looking at Keelon Russell being the guy stepping into a situation where you have playmakers on the offensive side of the ball, coupled with Alabama's defense that's going to be one of the top defenses in the country. I think that if the Tide can hit their stride and really pick up some momentum, some steam, they could get through this again 9-game conference schedule, and they could end up here in Atlanta, man. And then obviously you have Georgia. One thing that I would say on the Georgia side of things from an offensive side of the football, they did lose some playmakers on the offensive side. So who's going to be those receivers that are going to step up? What guys do they have that can beat you over the top? That's going to be the question that needs to be answered from their side. But obviously, Kirby Smart typically, he'll have those guys ready from a defensive standpoint. But what is the offense going to look like? So those are questions that need to be answered. Obviously, they do have, Gunnar Stockton coming back. So they're not having a new quarterback. But again, who is he going to throw the ball to? But yeah, ultimately, that's my hot take, man. No LSU, no Texas in the SEC championship game, but instead Alabama and Georgia. All right. So let's move on here. Let's talk about our next topic. And this is going to come from training camp, just some training camp news in the NFL. There was one specific joint practice that happened. And, again, this happens every year. There's fights at joint practices. So I just wanted to talk about the Cowboys and the Saints joint practice because each of these teams were fined $500,000 for their parts in a fight that took place at the joint practice that was conducted for both of these teams. Now, obviously, the NFL and the competition committee, they set forth a standard and made sportsmanship a point of emphasis, obviously over the years. And this also includes sportsmanship at joint practices, not only on game day, right? So I think in knowing those things, obviously each team, this was communicated to each of these teams of what the expectations are when it comes to joint practices. Each club was reminded of what those standards are, and also the responsibility that they hold to prevent unsportsmanlike situations at joint practices that could, result in injury. So moving forward, like I said, there were multiple fights that occurred on both of the fields at the joint practices. For the Saints and the Cowboys, there were teams that were split up to work on their offense and defenses against one another. We all know, that's what goes on in joint practices. Want to test what your offense and your defense looks like up against the starting offense and defense of the opposing team. Now, during these separate splits, for both of these teams, there were punches that were thrown on both of the fields. They had to stop play multiple times throughout the course of the joint practice. And on one of those fields, it was a Saints offensive player and a Cowboys defensive player rushing over to join in the commotion. One player tossed a helmet. In one instance, in another, one of the other skirmishes, one of those other ones, a player was body slammed to the ground. Now, both of the head coaches, Brian Schottenheimer, Cowboys coach, and Kellen Moore, head coach of the New Orleans Saints, they discussed at one point whether or not they should continue to practice, if they should just go ahead and call it early, because these guys could not get it together. But they instead decided to go ahead and end the practice on time. And, obviously the NFL afterwards, they did request film of the practice so that they could evaluate the situations, what happened. And then ultimately that resulted in $500K being fined for both of these teams. And so just out of kind of just taking a quote from Kellen Moore after the practice, he said, "Look, obviously there was a lot of non-football stuff in that joint practice, unfortunately." He said, "We had a clean one today against the Rams. This was they had a joint practice. This was fast forward when they had another joint practice with the Rams." So he was more so speaking, in past tense about the fights that had occurred at the previous joint practice with the Cowboys. But he did say, hey, they had a clean one with the Rams, and some good work overall. Now, Cowboys owner and general manager Jerry Jones said that the fine that was applied to both of these teams, it was stiff. He said the fine does make the point that it's a serious matter, and it starts with everybody at all levels of a club. And the clubs in this case were two that were practicing together. And he said that it really emphasizes the league's intent to control it from the very top, which they start dealing out those kinds of fines. When they start dealing out those kinds of fines, they get your attention. So, again, this is something that, I personally think that, the NFL obviously is doing the right thing. They're doing a good job of that. I think that in joint practices, obviously even practice in general, because this isn't something that just happens at joint practices, right? We see teams in regular practice with each other, they get into fights. There's a lot of built up tension and emotion when it comes to the game of football. You got to think of it from this perspective. These are guys who are, they've been off for playing the game. They haven't played since, well, depending on when their season ends. And skirmishes, but when you start throwing punches and stuff like that, that's just not. There's no place in the game for that. That's not something that you want to have happen consistently. And so, again, this is something we see every single year. But I think that with this being an example that the NFL has set, with this big of a fine, this is something that these teams have to be aware of. This is what the standard is, and this is what's going to happen, continuing to happen going forward. I'm not saying everybody's going to get a $500,000 fine, but this goes to show you, how much this could hit if these fights occur, these types of fights. So again, at the end of the day, joint practices, which I personally, I don't really like joint practices, to be honest with you. They're cool, but it's like it it just gets kind of weird with joint practices. There, again, I'm not a player, so, but I don't personally necessarily like the joint practices all the time because it's like, man, you just hope and pray that your guys come out healthy. We look at, and again, this isn't to say that you can't get hurt in your in regular practice too. But you see it in, if you guys watch Hard Knocks, Seattle Seahawks, the guy Jake Bobo, wide receiver for Seattle, he tore his ACL in a joint practice, and again, that play that he did that on. That's not something that I would say that wouldn't have that couldn't have happened in just a Seattle Seahawks practice. It's just, joint practices make you uneasy and weird because it's like you're going to another team and, it just gets weird. But at the same time, there is benefits to joint practice to being able to gauge where your football team is from an offensive, defensive perspective against some of the better talent, the ones, defense and the ones on defense and offense of other teams. So you get a good sense of kind of where your team is. So, but again, that's all I had to say about that when it comes to these joint practices, and just kind of wanted to give you all some updates on that fine that happened. But before we get into our next topic, you are listening to the Lace Up Sports Talk show right here on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Audio Boom. Of course, you're tuning in via YouTube. You should be seeing below on your screen a button for you to be able to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please hit that button. And also make sure you look up and follow the Instagram page that you see on the other half of the screen there in the banner below. You will be notified once subscribing to the YouTube channel when a new episode posts. Also, on Instagram, you'll be able to keep up to date with any new postings or any announcements or anything like that are going on. I appreciate you all's love and support, and continuing to look forward to talking sports with y'all. So let's go into our next topic here. Want to shift gears. We've been heavy football. Want to talk baseball right now because we have a MVP race that's going on in baseball right now, and I want to zero in on one of my guys, one of my favorite players, Chicago Cub, Pete Crow-Armstrong, or PCA, is center fielder, and he's a National League MVP candidate. After again, this is a great year for Pete Crow-Armstrong. One game he had hit, he hit two home runs. He hit a leadoff home run and a walk-off home run against the White Sox in that Crosstown Classic Series that led the Cubs to a 7-5 10-inning victory. And PCA, he's only 24 years old, and he's the first player since 2010 to hit a leadoff homer and a walk-off blast in the same game. And it's also the first time in franchise history that a Cubs player has accomplished that in a game. And then he also reached the 30-30 club for the second consecutive season. So that is awesome. Again, that's 30 home runs that he's hit. 30-30 club is big, for baseball. So, those are some things that he's doing. And I think that when you look at, that even the next game after that, against the White Sox, he again stepped up and hit another leadoff home run in that game as well, and had a really good, solid game overall after that. Again, he had a single, a double, and a walk, and he also hit a 2-run home run in the 10th inning as well. So again, PCA is on fire right now, and the Cubs are looking and sitting pretty in the National League. Obviously, a few games behind the Milwaukee Brewers right now, but they're still sitting in prime position at the top of the wild card right now. And as far as the MVP race that's going on, Shohei Ohtani is the other guy that is in the mix. They're looking at him as a guy that could win back to back. But I think right now, if you look at the case for both of these guys, again, I think that these two guys are the top of the National League MVP race. I think that it's neck and neck between Pete Crow-Armstrong and Shohei Ohtani. If you look at, again, early in the year, Ohtani was favored to win. But again, PCA, with his play and everything that he's been able to do, he has catapulted himself in those conversations. And, I think that to look at the case for Pete Crow-Armstrong, his all-around value, looking at him, he's leading baseball in outs above average with the Golden Glove caliber center field defense. He also, again, he became the first Cubs player with consecutive 30 for 30 seasons. Again, 30 home runs and 30 stolen bases, which is amazing. And again, he's time and time again provided dramatic late game heroics. He's had leadoff home runs. Defensively, he showed up in the outfield. And again, the Cubs are in the thick of the NL pennant race. So, again, that wouldn't be the case if it was not for Pete Crow-Armstrong. So that's the case for him. And I'm looking forward to how the rest of this year shakes up. But I do think that right now, everybody in Chicago, we call him MVP. And I think that he is well on his way. And I think he very well, can win this MVP. And I expect him to bring it home. If he continues doing what he's doing, and the Cubs win the pennant, I think the MVP is definitely his. So, looking forward to how the rest of the season shakes up for my Cubs. But yeah, that's all I have for y'all today. Again, appreciate all of the love and support. I hope you all have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Sit back. We got some football that is going to be on your screens tomorrow, week 0 of the college football season. I can't wait to cut on the TV and watch College Game Day. But first, I will be going, actually, just to let you guys know, there is a Stranger Things, for all my Stranger Things fans, Stranger Things walking tour that's here in Georgia that my brother and I will be attending in the morning, which I'm super excited about because we're Stranger Things fans. I got my Stranger Things gear, my hat, my shirt. Y'all can check my social media. You'll see me post about that. But excited to do that walking tour and see some different areas where this show was actually filmed. And so, again, whatever you do this weekend, make sure you're safe. Make sure you enjoy yourself. And we'll do it all again next week, man. So, with peace, love, and roll tide.